Today's show is brought to you by Audible. Audible is offering our listeners a free audiobook with a 30-day trial membership. If you've never been an Audible customer and want to see what they offer, just go to www.audibletrial.com/Excelsior Journeys and browse the unmatched selection of audio programs. Download a title for free and start listening. It's that easy. Why Audible? Audible content includes an unmatched selection of audiobooks, original audio shows, news, comedy, and more from the leading audiobook publishers, broadcasters, and entertainers. And with this free 30-day trial, you'll have your pick of it all. You can hear books of all genres narrated by Jim Dale, Stephen Fry, Will Patton, Alex Hyde White, Jeff Brick, Neil Shaw, William Demerit, and even a few by me, George Sirois. So go to www.audibletrial.com/Excelsior Journeys and start your own 30-day journey with Audible today.
Hey, this is John Lee Dumas of the award-winning podcast Entrepreneurs on Fire, and you're listening to the Excelsior Journeys with George Sirois. Prepare to ignite.
Is there a burning desire within to share your creativity with the rest of the world? Do you insist on pursuing your passion by any means necessary? Then you are on an Excelsior journey, and you are not alone. Welcome back to Excelsior Journeys. My name is George Sirois. Thank you so much for being here for this week. And thank you for so much for being here in previous weeks. We're getting very close to 1,300 downloads, and I really appreciate everyone who's taken the time to listen to at least one episode of this show. And also a big thank you to everyone who came out for the Clayton Studios seminar that I did on podcasting. And it was a lot of fun to put that seminar together, a lot of fun to put the PowerPoint presentation together. And I hope you all learned so much about getting your podcast up and running. And for those of you who weren't there, we are planning to repeat this seminar over at Clayton Studios in the very near future. Very likely will be happening this month. So please reach out to claytonstudios.com for more information, and I'm looking forward to seeing you there. Now, it was a real blessing for me to be accepted into the BA Theater Arts program at Marymount Manhattan College, as opposed to the BFA Acting program at Marymount Manhattan College. Because by getting into the theater department with the concentration in acting, that opened things up for me to take a lot more electives that I wouldn't have been able to take if I had just done the acting program. And a big thing that I was able to do was I was able to take playwriting. And this played a big role in me kind of getting back in touch with writing in general. And it was a real thrill to do that, especially because of the classmates. One in particular really struck me as an absolute genius when it comes to playwriting, because one of the first things that we had to do was we had to basically put together a scene for our first assignment. And it was just like about maybe, I don't know, like about 5, maybe 10 minutes. And the scene that this particular gentleman wrote was called 84. And this was a scene that had a couple of kids that were sitting outside the principal's office. And one of the kids was this Lisa Simpson type of character who was dressed head to toe in a radiation suit because she had just seen the movie the day after. And so the entire conversation was just about everything that was going wrong with what was happening in the world, and it's because of all the radiation. And the boy was just kind of like dismissing it all because he was too busy watching Webster. And it really struck me, the whole conversation. It was just so funny, and it was so sharp, and just a real great piece of material. And I was just thinking, like, okay, this is somebody I really need to be friends with. And it turns out that that happened very quickly, because I became friends, and I'm very blessed to say I became friends with playwright Jonathan Norton. And Jonathan and I wound up, we both were freshmen at Marymount Manhattan College. We went on to become roommates our senior year, and I can't even say that I got to watch him grow as a playwright because the guy was already a genius. I just got to see him become more of a genius as a playwright. And he has gone on to continue chasing that dream, that passion, and he's been able to cultivate it and grow with it so much that he has now become a successful playwright in the Dallas, Texas area. And he's somebody who is a perfect example of living an Excelsior journey. And I'm so glad that he's here with us today. So without further ado, let me introduce you to my friend, Jonathan Norton. Jonathan, how are you, sir?
Hey, George, how are you?
I am doing great, man. I still just remember it was definitely a big, one thing that really helped with your 84 script was the reading that was done with it. It was just so funny. It was so funny. And so unforgettable too. It was one of those great moments of just listening to the two actors. I know B. Anthony Gibson played the boy, and I'm trying to remember.
Oh my God, you're right.
And I'm trying to remember who played the girl. But she nailed it. She absolutely nailed it. And because she had that sort of Lisa Simpson vibe to her delivery.
Was it Annalise? Was it Annalise?
I think it was. I think you're right. I think you're right. But yeah, it was just like I was blown away. It was just so funny, and I just remember just knowing that, like, okay, I'm gonna hang out with this guy. I'm gonna just definitely learn from him. Yeah. So
it's so funny that you mentioned 84 because in a lot of ways, later, like after I graduated from Marymount and started writing and working outside of college, that played a huge impact on me actually really understanding my voice and owning it in an interesting way because I was in a one-act play festival here in Dallas. And that was the play that was produced, and I handed it over to a really close friend and a very trusted collaborator who I'd worked with a few years prior, and I was so excited about the show and seeing it come to life, and it didn't. It just it crashed and burned. It absolutely crashed and burned, and I know, right? But what I realized in the process was the reason why it crashed and burned was in that particular instance, because I'm typically not a fan of playwrights directing their own work usually, but there's some instances in which it's like the voice is so specific, and trying to convey that voice to a group of actors and also then concurrently to an audience is so difficult that there's some instances in which, like, no, you just have to take ownership of this and tell this story, right? And so after that experience, I was in another one-act play festival at the same theater, and that particular year, I was like, hey, I think I want to just do this myself. Just, let me direct this myself. And it was everything that I thought it could be and expected it to be, and it was so awesome. And what's particularly interesting about this whole situation is this particular one-act play festival, it was one of those where, like, the audience gets to vote every night, right, for, like, their play. Mm-hmm. And that first year when we did 84, I think, was, like, out of 6 plays, it came in, I think, like, 5th place.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right? But that same theater had this thing called the Literary Prize, where, like, the panelists, the readers for the competition who select the plays, they pick one play to get, like, the Literary Prize, and I got the Literary Prize. So it's weird. It was like, I got the Literary Prize, but I came in 5th place. And so the next year, I was like, screw this. I'm doing it all myself, right?
Yeah.
I actually won first place, which was the weirdest thing. Which is cool too. It was really affirming. I still am not a huge fan of directing my own stuff, but I don't know why. That was just a very interesting. It was a very interesting learning experience, in part because it was an opportunity for me to understand my voice in such a way to then be able to go and convey it to directors and other collaborators. Like, hey, this is what this is, and this is how you can do it, and this is how you can do it successfully.
Yeah. Now, before you did, before that one, before you came to Marymount, you had already done a couple of plays beforehand, and those plays were very, very much like kind of dark comedies with a real great like biting kind of wit to it. And then years later, you have something that's out now that is, if I'm not mistaken, a much different tone. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So before we jump into your origin story, tell us a little bit about this latest production that you have, Mississippi Goddamn.
Well, actually, Mississippi Goddamn is a play that I wrote in 20. I started work on it in like 2011, actually. And then it received a production at the South Dallas Cultural Center in 2015. And then that production, or that play, was nominated by Mark Lowry, who has this thing here in Dallas called Theater Jones. It's an online performing arts website. He's also a member of the ATC, the American Theater Critics Association, and so he nominated it for their big national prize that they do each year, and so he nominated it for that, and it was a finalist, and it ended up being a finalist alongside like Sweat by Lynn Nottage, and like all these like crazy awesome playwrights I could never imagine in a million years like being in the company of. But it was nominated alongside all of these amazing plays. So it was like six plays that were nominated, and I didn't win, but I did win from the same organization, the M. Elizabeth Osborne Award, which is given to an emerging playwright. And so, and then it had a production in Des Moines, Iowa, like about 2 years later. And in June of 2020, it will be produced at the Playhouse on the Square in Memphis. And I think a few other things possibly on the horizon, but those aren't confirmed yet. So,
Gotcha.
Mississippi Goddamn. And then also currently I'm working on a play titled Penny Candy.
Penny Candy? Okay.
And that's being produced at the Dallas Theater Center this June. And that's basically it's a largely autobiographical play, and it's about my family when I was growing up. My mom and dad ran a candy house, like a neighborhood mom and pop store, like out of our house.
Mm-hmm.
And it tells the story of the candy house at the same time that crack cocaine was invading in the neighborhood. So,
wow.
So that's what I'm working on now. I just finished what I believe to be the draft that we will go into rehearsal with in May. And so I'm doing that. And then I'm working on a commission for the Dallas Theater Center that I haven't really started yet. I'm like in like this planning process of like trying to put the story together in my mind, trying to figure out who the characters are and what have you. But I hope to do that, to start actually actively writing that soon would be helpful.
Yeah.
The other thing I'm doing right now, which I'm really, really, really nervous about, actually I have to do it today, is write rejection letters.
Ooh.
And I've never done that before. And I've always been end of rejection letters. You don't know. I likely have many, many, many rejection letters I could pull from to figure out, hey, you know what I mean? But at the same time, I'm like, I just, it's, yeah. So I've been stressing out about that since yesterday. Well, actually, since maybe like last week, because I knew that I was going to have to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Wow. So yeah, you definitely have a lot on your plate there. So yeah. So with all of this in mind, let's go back to the beginning here. You said that your parents were run a little penny candy shop out of their house.
A candy house.
Yeah. So what was it about playwriting that grabbed you and just basically just kind of said, this is the direction you're going to go in life? What is it about it that, what was that lightning bolt moment for you? Was there like a particular show that you saw that you just realized that was going to be what you were going to do? What was that whole thing? Like, tell us your origin story.
Yes. When I was 15 years old, I did a production of Joe Turner's Come and Gone by August Wilson. And I think that was my first real introduction to like an actual play, like to the theater, besides singing A Christmas Carol when I was in the 6th grade or something. And so anyway, August Wilson's work just had such an enormous impact on me. And I remember when I was working on the show, once the show went up and we were in production and performance, on the weekends we had matinees. And so, I'd be stuck at the theater like all day. And so I started writing like monologues and little scenes. And then I would cast like the actors like backstage for like, they were coming off stage like from their scene, and I would just like grab them and like cast them to read my monologue or like act out this scene I had written. And one of the actresses who I still work with a lot today, who was in that production, she jokes about how they used to hide in the dressing room. They'd be like, "Oh my God, he's coming! He has a play! Hide! Turn off the lights!" That whole thing. And so it started with that. And then also when I was at Theater 3 working on that play, the stage manager, it's really awesome. Her name is Terry Tittle Hallman. She would let me borrow plays from her script library in her office. And so because of that, it was my first time encountering The Colored Museum by George Sirois. And you know how much of a George Sirois fan I am.
Oh, so, yes. I remember. I remember.
Yes.
I remember you holding up the pen that he used to sign.
That he signed, right? They used to sign the thing.
Noise bringing the funk. Yeah, I remember that very well. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and the poster that he gave me, that he let me take off the wall. Like, oh, you like it? Take it. I'm like, yes. So
that was
first encounter his work.
Moment right there.
I'm sorry. What was that?
Talk about a seminal moment right there.
I know, right? Yeah. And so I encountered his work because of her, and then also the work of many other playwrights, like Douglas Turner Ward. I read Happy Ending and A Day of Absence, and those two plays had like an enormous impact on me. So it really all started like at Theater 3, performing in Joe Turner's Come and Gone. And at that same time, I was a freshman at the Arts Magnet here in Dallas. And so at Booker T, which is the name of the Arts Magnet, we had a playwriting emphasis, or like you could take playwriting from like your sophomore year until your senior year. And so my sophomore year, I enrolled in playwriting, and it just kind of, I guess, snowballed from there. And in my senior year, our playwriting teacher, she knew that a few of us had like one-act plays that she thought we should get out there in the world. And so she told us about the Texas Young Playwrights Festival, and told us to apply, and we all applied, and I got in. And so that was like a really important experience for me as well.
So that play, now I remember there were two plays that really kind of stuck out to me, knowing the the kind of plays that you had written before you got to Marymount. One was Sacrilege or Good Intentions, and then the other one was Our Lady of South Oak Cliff, the Virgin Shaniqua.
Shaniqua, yes.
Yeah. So which one did you use that got you into that festival? Was it the
It
Shaniqua?
was Our Lady of South Oak Cliff, the Virgin Shaniqua.
Yeah. Now tell the listeners about this one. I absolutely love this guy.
Okay, so Our Lady of South Oak Cliff, the Virgin Shaniqua, was a play about a young girl named Shaniqua, a 15-year-old girl named Shaniqua, who lives in South Oak Cliff, which is an area of Dallas, and she's a teenage mother, or she's going to become a teenage mother. She's pregnant when we meet her, but she is convinced her mother, Elnora, that the baby is actually the second coming of Christ. How she convinced her mother, I don't know. But she convinces her mom that it's the second coming of Christ. And her mama is all caught up in planning for Jesus coming back to earth through her 15-year-old daughter's womb. And so it's a production. She's planning this. She's got everything, like, she's got the hotel set up so he won't have to be born in we have to come into the world in a barn.
That's the moment that got
animals and stuff. Like, she got it all together.
That's the moment that I remember the most. It was the moment where she gets down on her knees and yells to the stomach, "Jesus, if you hear me, don't worry about the manger. We got a room set up for you at the Holiday Inn."
Yes.
Oh, that was fantastic. I never read this. I never read this script, but just when you told me about that, I was like, I'm never going to forget. It's genius.
And then, but the thing that throws it all off is that Shaniqua's boyfriend, Quincy, who's also years old, very much wants to take responsibility for his child and to actually to be a father and to be recognized as the father of her child. And so then you have this 15-year-old kid trying to figure out how to throw a win, or how to figure out how to convince Elnora that you're delusional and I'm the father of the child.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah, that was...
Then Sacrilege, I always thought Sacrilege, it was about 3 nuns, and they're stuck at the convent or whatever, while the other nuns and the other people at the convent have gone to Jerusalem for some pilgrimage or something, and they're all there alone. And while they're there, the devil appears, and the devil convinces them that he will turn to Christ and be good and be a good Christian if he can have sex with Sister Mary. I forget what her name was, but she was a really sweet, innocent young nun. And so he could have sex with her. That would make him pure. And he would become a Christian. And so I think it was Sister Mary Agnes, who's left in charge. She's kind of power hungry and wants to whatever, storm the Vatican or something. I don't know. She's real power hungry. So she's like, that sounds like a great idea. So she convinced Sister Mary Margaret, or whatever that one was named. So convinces her to have sex with the devil so that, And so Sister Mary Margaret, or whichever sister it is that has sex with the devil, has sex with the devil, and then a day later she's pregnant because it is the devil, and I guess that happen. So a day later, she's pregnant, and then the devil like skips town, as the devil would likely do. And so yeah, so that was I was like what, a senior in high school, like
Yeah.
yeah.
I just remember just thinking, like, yeah, that one won't play well at the Bible Belt.
I know, right?
But at the same time, like it plays up to everything that is true. Like no matter how no matter how holy someone will be, there's always going to be that sort of breaking point where they're going to think like, if I do this, then I'll be known as the one who did this. And
right, exactly.
Like, I'll be known that I'll have brought Satan to repent his ways. And
right.
But at the same time, Satan is still Satan. So it's just like,
right.
It really is. It's like something that everything just plays up to exactly what it is, what we know it all to be.
Right.
So yeah, that was when I heard about those, I was just like, yeah, we're gonna be friends. I definitely knew it was just like, yeah, we're gonna be friends. So during the time that we were both at Marymount, I know that like you said, you had gotten to meet George Sirois, obviously a huge moment. And later on, you also wound up getting into the what is it, what was it called, the workshop that Richard Niles did? Was it was it writer director workshop or something like that?
No, I didn't get into that.
I thought you did. I thought you would.
No, I didn't. I did not.
Really? Oh,
no.
So, I must have been thinking like, because I know there was something that you wrote that wound up getting put up in the Black Box Theater. I remember Ollie Green was in it. There was who was it? Was it
a directing project?
It was a directing project. Yeah. Yeah, I remember it was like the second semester or something like that, I think.
Was it the Susan? It was. I did a Susan Laurie Parks play in the directing projects, and Allie was the assistant director. Allie Green was assistant director.
There was
maybe that's I remember because one of the props in the play was a big giant cockroach. Okay.
Yeah.
And what was so funny was I always remember me and Allie on the bus in on the Upper East Side.
Yep.
From the Hirsch residence to the theater.
Yeah.
2 young black men on a New York City bus on the Upper East Side carrying a big ass cockroach. I always
That's right. That's what I'm thinking of, because that must have been it, because I know that there was it must not have been it must have been like a directing project that you did, and not something that you had written, because I remember you used the theme to What's Happening at the beginning and the end.
That was it. That was it.
Okay.
Laurie Parks play.
Okay. I could have sworn that was your play at first. No. But that so you got the taste of directing, but then after that, that's when we went our separate ways. I think you went back to Dallas at that point, right?
All
right. So you go back to Dallas, but at the same so when did you start writing again? When did that? Because I know that there were a couple of ideas you had that you were playing around with during our senior year together, and nothing ever came of it. But then after graduation, you went back to Dallas. What happened after that? What happened after we lost touch?
I came back. I got a job or whatever to make money. I started working with mostly African American theater companies here in town. I started stage managing because at Marymount, part of the because I was a directing emphasis person, whatever, and part of it was you had to stage manage. So I came back home and started stage managing. I did a show with, do you know Kiki Shepard from the Apollo?
The name's not coming to me. Is she like one of the co-hosts or something?
She was
Like,
like a host for the Apollo back in the day. No, she was like a co-host, and she never really spoke very much. She just came out. She's like the Vanna White of the Apollo. So like she did
okay.
one show, and I stage managed it. So I did a lot of stage managing, and then I had this moment of complete and absolute vanity. I mean, it was nothing but shameless me, 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 me. But I got to this point where I got annoyed with the fact that nobody ever reviews the stage manager. Like, you don't pick up a paper and somebody's like, oh my God. And the show was called so brilliantly by so and so. And so I got really upset. I know it's stupid and it's really vain. It's absolutely vain. But so then I was like, this whole stage management thing, I don't know about this anymore because I need more recognition. I know that's embarrassing to admit, but it was true.
We all feel that, you know, we all feel
I know
like
it's horrible, right?
and well, we also, you know, like we also went through 4 years at Marymount Manhattan College where, you know, like we were basically, you know, we were the writers, we were the directors, we were the actors, we were, you know, like everything and everything about, you know, like that little spot on 71st and 3rd, like that was
Right.
our training ground. And then, you know, like then you go out into the world and all of a sudden it's just like no one, you know, like you're basically starting from the ground again.
Right.
And so yeah, it's very easy to have that sort of mentality of just like, you know, well, you know, it needs to be about me because it's always been about me, you know, and
Right.
for those
I
4 years,
guess that's true. That's very true.
you know, so now all of a sudden there's the, you know, the real world is out there and now it's just like, okay, I got to make my name again.
Exactly.
And not only do I have to do that, but I have to keep doing it because not only do I have to, you know, like, you know, get this project off the ground, whatever it winds up being, but then after that, I got to start all the way down from the bottom again and start building myself back up again. So yeah, I totally understand that. I mean, this is the show, you know, this particular show, like this is what I'm doing, you know, right now to try to get my name out there. And not just, you know, like, yes, I'm trying to get, you know, like get the names of everyone who is a guest out there because I believe every single one of you deserves to have your name out there. But at the same time, I want to be out there too, you know, so
Yeah.
you know, like I get it. I get exactly what it is that you mean. So yeah, you want to get that sort of notoriety and, you know, like it's almost like its own little drug, you know, and but at the same time, it you know, some of, you know, and in some cases it can be just as harmful. But at the same time, if you know what you're doing with this and you actually use it as prescribed, then, you know, then it could wind up working for you.
And I think for me, part of it also was the fact that I realized that there were other things that I could be doing and other things that I actually should be doing. Prior to that particular moment, I had actually Our Lady of South Cliff, the Virgin Shaniqua, had been produced like the summer before, and that same theater company where I was stage managing at, they produced it. And the reason why they produced it, in part, was because one of my high school teachers was talking to the artistic director and was like, oh, you know, he's also a really amazing playwright. And so the artistic director came to me and was like, hey, we hear you're a playwright. You know, we have this play festival. You need to be applying to it, like that. And so she wouldn't let me off the hook. And so every month, you know, this is before Facebook and email and whatnot and text messaging. So every few months I'd get a phone call from Gwina Bennett, and she'd be like, hey, I need you to make sure you submit your play. And every few months I'd get that until finally I was like, okay, fine. And so I submitted Shaniqua. And then I went back to stage managing, and I think I had that moment of realizing like, oh, I really enjoyed that. And that's actually something that I can make a name for myself with. And I don't really necessarily see where this stage management thing is going. However, looking back on it now, I can certainly say one of the great things about stage managing is that if you're really, really, really good at it, that can actually open a lot of doors, because there's so many types of opportunities and theaters that are hard to get access to for playwrights. But if you're a stage manager and you're really good at it, that can actually open some doors, and you can start working with amazing directors and other playwrights and the artistic staff and the production staff at different theaters, and meet a whole lot of people and really create really authentic and genuine working relationships with some really awesome people that can also, if you happen to be an aspiring director or an aspiring playwright, you now have connections to people that a lot of people who are struggling to get their work out there don't have those same connections. You know what I mean? So,
oh yeah.
So there were certainly times when I was like, maybe I should have stuck with that stage thing. Like, there were certainly times when I felt that way.
Yeah. But since then, I mean, since then you've gotten to add more to your body of work, though, correct?
Yes,
You know, like
yes.
you've been to, get more, get your name out there more. You know, like I've been seeing, I've definitely been seeing it on your social media page. And so with that in mind, out of the once you started, like really writing again, did you want to stay with that sort of, same kind of biting dark comedy tone, or did you want to just kind of like shift it to something else? Did you want to try like a good mix of everything? What's, like what was your thought going into this next era of playwriting for you?
Thank you. I certainly wanted to shift.
Yeah.
I felt like, and again, this is maybe vanity speaking. It's probably a completely vain thing. But I was like, I got to a point where I felt like the funny, quirky, biting, dark comedy, it like, sometimes it can be difficult for that to, I think it can resonate in performance, like people see it and have the opportunity to experience it. It can certainly resonate there. But I learned was that in terms of it being read and selected for different opportunities, it's really difficult and hard, and for people to look at something, because this is what it was. I'm going all around the way, and this is what I mean. The thing that I started struggling with was that people would see my stuff and somehow call it light. They were like, "Oh, it's so nice and light because it makes me laugh, so it's light." And I would get upset about that. I would get really upset when people would call my work light. So I just kind of got to this point where I was like, screw that. I don't want to write anything light. Now, having said that, humor is so much a part of my life that there's absolutely no way I could write anything that doesn't make you laugh. You know what I mean?
Right.
Even though laughter is not at the center of what that experience is, but when there's laughter, even in like the darkest circumstance. And I would say that I didn't think that I necessarily wanted to write dark plays, but I just wanted to write things that I felt were more serious or dramatic. Just thought I would just be taken seriously. And then that kind of sounds stupid to say that, but that's honestly what I thought. At that same time that I was trying to make that transition, I was in the Masters of Liberal Studies program at Southern Methodist University. And one of my professors, it's an amazing woman named Vicky Meek. She's a visual artist. And she used to be like one of those like really like radical, like fight the power, like 1960s kind of people. And I love her so much. She was one of my professors and eventually became my advisor for a play that I wanted to write as part of an independent study project. And I think I know because she told me that one of the reasons why she was excited to work on the project and why she agreed to do it was because she was very, very familiar with my work. She had seen it, years before, and was very impressed by it. But she said that when I told her that I was really looking to kind of transition and make a shift and try new things, that was the thing that really sold her on the independent study project. And so I started working with her. I came up with an idea to write a play about the Atlanta child murders that took place in Atlanta between 1979 and 1981.
Wow.
I started working on that just basically as an independent study class project. And as I came toward the end of the semester and our time was almost up, I had a meeting, we had to go in every few weeks for a meeting with your advisor for the independent study. So I went to the South Dallas Cultural Center because at that time, Vicki was the manager of the South Dallas Cultural Center. And I went in and had a meeting to talk about the play and its development and where it was. And actually, at this point, I had only written like 10 pages of the play.
Really?
I'd had this entire process that was, what it was I came up with this idea because Vicki's a visual artist. She's not a theater person necessarily, but she certainly has a great love of the theater. But she's a visual artist. And so my idea was, and I had taken a visual arts course with her. So the idea was, what if I select an African-American visual artist, and then for half of the semester, I study and investigate their work. And then from that investigation, I come up with a play that's inspired by their work. It's not a play that's like a literal adaptation of something they've done, but it's a play that's like based on their work and their aesthetic and the kind of themes that they explore. Here's the play that I want to write. And so I did that, and I started writing I gave her like a full draft. Here's the thing. I had written like a full draft of a play, right? That turned, and I thought it was awesome. And she reads it and she's like, what is this Casper the Friendly Ghost shit? I don't like the whole ghost thing. And she was like, I don't like this. Mind you, she's not a theater person. So in terms of critiquing and how we're taught to critique, work in the theater, it was just straight up like, this is the Atlanta child murders we're talking about. She goes on and on and on. And she's like, you got to try this again. I don't like it. Because basically, it was these two little black kids who go on a search to find a dead kid. But then the dead kid they're looking for is this ghost that's with them. But the ghost is really cutesy. And there's all these cutesy interactions between the kids and the ghost. And she's like, what's this Casper the Friendly Ghost stuff? This is horrible. Like, you need to go back. Do this over again. And I'm thinking to myself, wait, this is not how we do things. Like, I don't understand what you're talking about. But I went back again, and I came back in with 10 new pages, and that's all I had. I had to do more work, but we had a meeting, and she was like, I really like what you're doing and the direction you're going in and what have you. And she says, our time will be up soon. But I want to make sure that you keep working on this. And I want to make sure you don't give up on it. And then she said something that absolutely changed my life. Like, absolutely changed my life. She said, but the only way I can guarantee that you will keep doing this and keep working is if I give you money. Right?
Oh, okay.
If I give you money, that would guarantee that you keep working on this. Now, at South Dallas Cultural Center, Vicky had created this thing called the Diaspora Performing Arts Commissioning Project. And it was created to provide money, commission money, to artists to create work about the African American experience. So she was like, I will give you one of my Diaspora Performing Arts commissions, which at the time was like $2,500, which was like way more money that I had ever made doing anything in the theater, like ever, right?
Yeah, that's no small chunk of change like that.
Oh, right. I was like, I can pay my rent, other bills, I can buy some new shoes. Like, there's a whole lot of stuff I can do with this money, right? It gave me that money to keep working on the play, and we eventually produced it. I think maybe like 2 years later. Oh, that play was also, it got workshopped at the Black and Latino Playwrights Conference in San Marcos, Texas. And there I met this wonderful woman named Melissa Maxwell. She is an actress, a dramaturg, and a director, and she's based out of New York City. And she was my director for the workshop at the Black and Latino Playwrights Conference. And during breakfast, she handed me a list of places, a list of these different opportunities. And she's like, here's some other places you need to send your play to. And so I only sent it to like one, because I was lazy, but I only sent it to like one theater or one place on the list. And that was Playpen, which is a new play development conference in Philadelphia. This really great program that they do every year. And so I submitted it there, and it got in. And she came down to Philadelphia to work with me and to be my director. But so that opportunity, that one thing from Vicky saying, here's $2,500 to keep working on this play, led to really wonderful, wonderful opportunities for me. So yeah, that's a long story.
Hey, that's what this is all about. That is your story. Like that's amazing. That's so cool that somebody, it really makes all the difference when somebody just says, like, I am going to invest in you. That's basically what she did. That's really what she did. She saw your talent. She saw what you have to offer, and you realized that a way to cultivate that, to really watch it grow, is to make sure that that's what you're doing. That's what you're concentrating on right now. And the best way to do that is to, like you said, make sure that your rent is paid. Make sure that you can, pay some bills. Make sure that you can leave all that behind for just like this period of time, so you can focus on this. Right. And that's just awesome. So what's the name of that play? That
play about the Atlanta child murders. It's titled My Tidy List of Terrors.
My Tidy List of Terrors.
Yes. Wow. And it actually comes from the title of the visual of, for that, because I said it was an independent study project and exploring the work of an African American visual artist. Well, I decided to explore the work of three artists, and it was a mother and her two daughters. This wonderful woman named Betty Sarr, and she's an African American artist, and she had three daughters, but only two of them followed in her footsteps, I believe. Allison Sarr, who's a sculptor, and then Leslie Sarr, I think, who's a painter, and she's kind of does a lot of different things, not just painting. And Leslie created this piece called My Tidy List of Terrors. And when I saw it, it was just so compelling and so captivating to me. And the title and how the title related to the image, all of it. And I just immediately, that's the title of the play. And I talked to Vicky Meek, and Vicky Meek was like, well, see if you can get in touch with Leslie before you use the title, because you just don't want me to use somebody's title, you know what I mean?
Right.
I found
Yeah,
Leslie,
and titles aren't
and
copyrighted, but at the same time, it's just like, yeah,
yeah, exactly. But
yeah,
but
you
you know,
want to,
in terms of, but it's just like a nice thing to do. Like if you know that that title purposely came from something, and you
Mhm.
know that you potentially have reach out to someone. Um, I think for most part, it's because it's a visual artist, an African American visual artist, and someone who's still living. And so Vicky was like, just see if you can reach out and get the use for that title. And I found her on Facebook, and she was awesome, and that was great. But then, like, I wrote Mississippi Goddamn, and this is kind of like, well, it's Nina Simone. It feels like you can just do it. It's just a ton of, you know what I mean, whatever. But yeah. But I'm certainly happy that I reached out to Leslie. Kind of a nice thing to do.
yeah, yeah, oh yeah, definitely. So, so tell us a little bit about Mississippi Goddamn, because when I heard about this, I was just like, okay, definitely this is definitely different from the Jonathan Norton stuff that I know. So,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it was just like I love the fact that you were taking this shot, that you were going down this path. I thought
Yeah.
because I knew that it was going to be nothing but good stuff for you. So,
Oh, thank you.
tell us about this. About this show.
Mississippi Goddamn takes the first act takes place in 1963, and it tells the story of a family who lives right down the street from the civil rights activist Medgar Evers. Um, and the daughter in this family has become very active in the protest, the NAACP protest happening in Jackson, Mississippi at that time. And as a result of her being very active in that, has put her family in a very vulnerable position of being looked at as the enemy from some of their neighbors and also their coworkers and what have you. And the father kind of hooks up with one of his neighbors who is trying to hatch a scheme to um, to intimidate and frighten Medgar Evers so that Medgar and his family will move out of the neighborhood. Because first of all, at that time, a lot of the people in the neighborhood were receiving threats from their employers, from the city, to basically figure out a way to get Medgar Evers not only out of your neighborhood, but out of Jackson, right? And then also, this is a very comfortable neighborhood, and you had people who had fought so hard and for so long to be able to provide security and safety for their family from this very racist, frightening world that they were living in. And they had finally been able to secure that. And someone like Medgar Evers comes along who is actually threatening that very fragile thing that they've tried so hard to create for their families. And so that's act one. And then in act two, and act one ends with the assassination of Medgar Evers. And then act two actually takes place 5 or 6 years earlier. And we actually, in act two, we see the first and only time Medgar Evers and Merle Evers came to visit that family, came to have like dinner with the family. And it's like a dinner party from hell. And the play was inspired by a trip that I took in 2011 at SMU. We have this thing called the Civil Rights Pilgrimage, where a bunch of students, we hop on a bus with our facilitators, and we visit several cities that were key cities during the Civil Rights Movement. And cities happened to be Jackson, Mississippi. And we visited the home of Medgar Evers and Merle Evers. And our tour guide told us the story of how many of his neighbors kind of pitched in to try to raise money to convince, to basically, here's the money, take this money and move. So they tried on a few occasions to buy him out of the neighborhood, and he refused every offer. And also, there are times when, he traveled a lot. He was always up and down the road. And Medgar Evers was alone with the kids. And if you can only imagine, like, the kind of fear that she must have experienced, have experienced with her husband putting his life in danger, traveling up and down the road, but then also knowing that she and her children, their lives were in danger, because no telling who was looking at them and why, and what have you, and what kind of horrible phone calls they were getting in the middle of the night. And so she was telling us these stories, and I just remember thinking to myself, oh my God, there's a play in here somewhere. So I wrote the play, did one draft of it, and it did okay. It became a finalist for the O'Neill, which was really cool.
Yeah.
But I knew that it still needed more work. And I talked to Vicky Meek again, Vicky Meek, there's that name. And she was like, okay, let's go ahead and produce it. Let's do it. Let's develop it, and then let's produce it. And so we had that other play, My Tidy List of Terrors. We produced that in like 2012, I believe, like the fall. Yeah, the early winter of 2012, I think. I know it's okay. We learned a lot from that experience, because at South Dallas Cultural Center, they had never really produced a play before, like full-on produce a play. So we learned a lot from that. And so when Vicky talked to me about doing Mississippi Goddamn, she was like, let's do it, but we're going to do things different. So we were able to, because South Dallas Cultural Center is part of the city of Dallas, so they get funding from like the Office of Cultural Affairs. So this is amazing. I mean, this is unheard of. Vicky Meek was able to get me $13,000 just to develop a play. Now, we're not talking producing it. We're not talking producing it. No.
That's not the budget. That's for you to
develop a play.
That's amazing.
So
that is amazing.
Right. So we had money to hire the director, to like to kind of like bring her on early and have enough money to like keep her in that process for like a year or so. Money to have like a variety of different, like we had some small table readings mostly, that, we were paying people like $50 for like the table readings, because it was like one evening, and like maybe $150 when we did like a 2-day workshop. But then eventually, a few months later, we had like a big staged reading that involved like a week of rehearsal.
Oh, wow.
We were able to pay like everybody like $500 for the rehearsal, and like pay like bring in designers, and like basically we had $13,000 to workshop and to develop the play over. And then after that, for the production, through the city, I think she was able to get like $15,000 from the city for the production, and I got a grant from the from Mid-America Arts Alliance for $15,000. So it's like $30,000 for the production, which for like a small theater like group or whatever, it's like a lot of money to put on a show. But what she then did, which was really crazy and also life-changing, was she basically said, okay, Jonathan, you're responsible for this. So here's this big pot of $30,000. You're responsible for producing this play. I don't know anything about producing it. Well, me, Jonathan, certainly did not know anything about producing a play. But Vicky, I certainly don't know anything about it. And I don't have the staff to do it. So figure it out. Here's the money. Right? Wow. I know. And so we had 2 actors who were actors equity. So I had to figure out how to do the contracting and how to pay them. And this thing called Paymaster, where like if you have actors, if you're a small theater group, You can hire a paymaster, and what happens is that they will figure out what you owe to the actors who are in actors equity, and basically you send the money to the paymaster, and then the paymasters will cut their checks for them. So like every week that check is coming not from you but from the paymaster, and so you don't have to worry about taking out taxes or anything. Like they calculate what all of that is, and you just send them the money, and then they cut the checks. So I had to learn.
Well, that's fantastic.
I know, isn't it cool?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I had to learn how to do all that, and I was responsible for like hiring the designers and putting together the production budget and all of that, and paying the actors, and so I was that guy that I was like, so there was this one actor in the show whose son plays in the NFL, and so he would never cash his checks on time, I guess because his son played in the NFL. And so I'd be like, homie, I need you to take a check, go to the bank, and cash it. So I could
so you can do the books. You can make sure that everything is correct there.
Right. And like, I got to deal with this balance and make this all work. So I was responsible for everything. So basically all the money and documenting and making sure everything went where it was supposed to go. But the wonderful thing of it and the great gift of that was, as a playwright, I controlled the purse strings.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so if there were... No, I'm listening.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So like, if there were things that I felt really passionate about, like I really feel like, particularly from a design standpoint, like I really feel like this story would benefit from boom, boom, boom. An example of that is there's a gun in the play, and like we kept playing with all these really fake looking guns that were just like, I don't know if this is going to work for us. Like they looked real, but they weren't real enough. And I was able to be in charge of saying, what can we do? And our stage manager was like, oh, there's a company, there's a guy in Virginia or someplace where you can rent guns from him, like all kinds of arms, and they've been like manipulated so they can't actually kill anyone, but you can still use them. You know what I mean? And they're completely authentic and they look real and they function real. You just can't shoot anybody with them. Like being able to say, we have a telephone in the play. The telephone rings. When the telephone rings, I want the actual telephone to ring. Like I felt empowered as a playwright to say that, and then able to say, what does it mean to make that happen, and what does it cost to make that happen? And I was in control of the money, so I could figure out how to make that work. And it wasn't me going, oh God, here's some design things that really matter to me that I think are really important. I hope somebody will do this. It was like, no, I can actually make this happen. Amazing, you know.
That is so cool. And I gotta raise my glass to Vicky on this for giving you that.
Okay.
Sort of, that's amazing. The fact that she trusted you to take this and run with it, and seemed to open up a lot of doors for you by doing this. Like that is really something you don't hear that very often. So
it was a really amazing experience.
Vicky, if you're listening, God bless you for doing this, because you really are doing the Lord's work by doing this. So
right,
so for everything that you've done, for all the experiences that you've had, what do you have to say for the up and coming playwrights that are looking to people like you for inspiration? What is it that you have to offer them in terms of what you can say to kind of keep them going?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things would be to not compare yourself to others, and to not compare your trajectory to somebody else's trajectory. You know, I think that's the thing that I still at times get hung up on, and I think that's the biggest thing that can hang you up, is when you look at other people and you're like, oh, well, so-and-so is doing this, I would like to do that, or I'm not doing that, so I'm not really doing anything. Like you can't allow yourself to do that, because as soon as you do that, that's when you get hung up. And it's also important to remember that in this business, everybody wants what somebody else has. Like you can be looking at like an Academy Award winner, whatever, you know what I mean? And you're like, oh my God, they have totally like climbed the mountain and they've done blah, 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 blah. And there's something that they haven't accomplished that still haunts them, or something that you've done that seems so simplistic and meaningless to you that means so much to them. You know what I mean? So it's important just not to compare yourself to other people. Another piece of advice I would give is, and this has been really important to me, is to not be afraid to try new things. To not be afraid to take a shift every now and then just to see where that might take you. Because there does come a point when you just have to ask yourself, what's working for me right now and what's not working for me, you know?
Right.
And to be honest with yourself about that, and then to try to figure out ways to do that and to accomplish it. Another really big piece of advice is to not be afraid of development opportunities. I know development gets like a really bad rap, and I understand why it can, but I also feel, especially for emerging playwrights and when you're just starting out and when you're trying to build a name for yourself, that development opportunities, I think in many ways, can be the best way to go, because a lot, like, for instance, a place like Playpen, or if you can get into the O'Neill, or even not even places like that, there's so many other really cool opportunities that exist out there that allow you the opportunity to have what can be considered a professional credit. You know what I mean? And then also, more importantly, it just gives you the chance to meet other playwrights and directors and people you would never have an opportunity to meet otherwise. As we all know, playwriting is such a lonely profession, right?
Oh yeah.
And not just, it's lonely because, you're sitting, in front of your computer by yourself working. Not just lonely in that way, but even when you get into production, when you get into a production situation, it's lonely because you're the only playwright in the room.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And no one really understands actually what you're going through and what you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
The great thing
because
about
you're standing in the back, just watching them. You're like, they're all working to
exactly
memorize all these lines and everything that you have, and you're just sitting there, just like, is it really any good? Is it
right?
Is it working?
And you're taking notes and then decide like, which notes should I give to the director? When should I give this note to the director? I mean, but it's really lonely. And so the great thing about development opportunities is that that's one of the few times when playwrights get to come together as a group and spend time together and learn from each other and what have you. And I think that's really important and valuable. And again, it's an opportunity to get to meet people and get your name out there and get some professional credits on your resume. It can be really useful. And then I think finally, when you get opportunities, don't blow them. I mean, that's a really big one. So yeah.
So where can our listeners find you out in the world? Or out in the virtual world, out in social media? Where can they find you? Where can they learn more about you? Where can they even contact you if they need to?
There's obviously my Facebook page. And it's just Jonathan. You can find me, Jonathan Norton, on Facebook. You can friend me. And also I have www.playwriting, nortonscriptworks.com. I believe it's .com. Yeah, I think. It's Norton Scriptworks. But somehow or another, I would always think that I was going to get like caught or something. That I'm sure there's like that's used somewhere else, but it's still out there. So Norton Scriptworks, and I have a contact thing on the website. You can contact me. And thanks for asking me about that, because I totally need to update that website.
That'll always give you the definitely give you the push to do that. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I definitely know what you mean with that. You know, like I'm very much behind on, kind of updating my own website and updating my my own Facebook author page. Yeah. This is just been awesome being able to, catch up with you and also, get a really good firm grasp on your origin story, everything that's been going on after we, lost touch after we graduated from Marymount. And it's just been amazing listening to your journey that you're still on to this day. And it's really, really something. So thank you so much for being a part of the show, Jonathan. Thank you so much to all of you listeners for downloading. And by all means, please, keep on downloading, keep on subscribing, keep on rating, keep on reviewing. The show's home base is at Podbean, but you can also find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcast, Spotify, and TuneIn. 6 different places where you can find this show. And I really hope that that all of you keep on listening, keep on downloading, and keep on being inspired by stories such as Jonathan's. And for Jonathan Norton, this is George Sirois saying to all of you, ever upward. And we'll see you next week.